Welcome to episode 212 of the Lone Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about some standouts in last night's matchup between Toronto and Calgary. And it was a really exciting matchup to watch and really interesting first period. You had two goals that ended up getting called off early on with John Tavares' goal with the high stick and then Joel Farabee's goal for goalie interference. And eventually the game just ended up being more and more high scoring in favor of the Leafs. And they ended up winning this one 6-3. It's just back and forth all game. And eventually it just got to a point where Toronto, they were able to maintain their scoring and they just sustained their effort. William Nylander was dynamic throughout this game and was really exciting to watch. I believe he's from the Calgary area too, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but I believe he's from there. And just in terms of the Leafs in general, like a bunch of their top guys are going. Of course, you get Matthews and Nylander going. You had some other guys were rolling too. In terms of depth guys, I thought Steven Lawrence was noticeable. Bobby McMahon was noticeable. And it feels like every game I watch of the Leafs, Bobby McMahon always shows up, whether it be on the score sheet or physical or in terms of his forechecking ability, like whatever it may be, he always seems to find a way to be engaged in the play. And it makes him so effective to watch. And he's such a consistent player for them night in and night out because of the role that he plays, the role that he's given, but the role that he plays with consistency. I feel like that's just a testament to how much he's put in over time, and it's really allowed him to be able to be a consistent player in the league thus far. Just a really good shot. He's a really good shooter off the rush. He's a really good shot threat in terms of shooting off straight line routes. Sometimes a hard thing to do in terms of the modern day game in the NHL, but he's actually quite good at it. And he's good at shooting off one leg. He's got a powerful weight transfer when it comes to his legs. He's got a strong lower body and core to be able to rotate and power through his shots. And he was just shooting the puck with velocity yesterday and purpose and intentions, which is really nice to see out of him. And some other guys I thought were really good outside of that. Max Pacioretty was steady. I noticed him here and there. I noticed him, and obviously he's had to adapt to a different role in Toronto than he's ever played before, which has got to be something interesting for him because he's never really played more of a third line checking style role per se. And he's kind of been forced to adapt to that, particularly because of the surgeries that he had, the injury issues that he had, and just because of age as well. But he can still show that with time and with consistency in how he's playing in the middle six, he can still produce offensively. I actually feel like it's better for him to have a slightly lesser role because it puts less pressure on him and it allows him to recover a little bit better given his age. And obviously, we know older players, the more they age, the more they typically need recovery. So I feel like that's actually a benefit to him. And Shirley has taken advantage of some of the role that he's been given so far. He's actually played more of a checking role this year than ever, which is really interesting to watch because I never would have thought about Max Pacioretty as a checking forward 10 years ago. But it's kind of interesting how times change with that and how roles change. And then as for Calgary, I thought Joel Farabee is really good throughout this game. And I feel like he could be a really good addition for this team. I feel like there could be, I don't know necessarily what his ceiling is, but I don't necessarily see him being a 70-point guy. I could surely see him being a 60, 65 point guy for the Flames if he's able to get a longer tenure there. And I keep forgetting that he's only 24. Sometimes I think that he's 27 or 28, but he's only 24. So you have an age factor there that's an advantage. Morgan Frost has played really good hockey for them so far. I noticed him again yesterday. I thought he was really noticeable with his speed. He fits this team systematically speaking really nicely. And Farabee's a guy at his best you can get a top six winger. And I feel like that's what they're hoping for out of him. And obviously with Andre Kuzmenko, he's nearing 30, so the age difference in terms of getting Farabee is really important there. And I just feel like with Farabee, if you put him with good line mates at 5-on-5 on the power play, it sounds cliche, but with him, especially just given his power forward style and how he plays an offensive game, you need to put him with skill players in order for him to produce. You can't put him on the third and fourth line like they did in Philadelphia and expect him to do much of anything with the role that he's given there. So in Calgary, he's obviously flipped that a little bit so far. He's played, I believe, top 6 minutes every game now, if not top line minutes every game now. So, and he's been playing with Huberdeau and Kadri. So those are two guys you really want to see give him the puck and for him to produce. And I feel like he's adapted on that line really nicely because he obviously brings a physical edge, but he can combine that with his skill. He's not, he's got above average skill for an NHL player, but certainly a guy that really works in tandem with those other two guys really nicely, given that Kadri can be a playmaker and more of a dual threat player. Huberdeau more of a passer, so he can dish him the puck. And he was really noticeable. I really like Matt Coronado's game for them, and he's just really steady all around, really noticeable as an offensive presence, really noticeable in zone offensively and creating around the net. He's like a dog on a bone, and he's just chasing the puck relentlessly, always looking to get and convert on second chance opportunities, rebound opportunities. He's always looking to drive the net, drive the crease, trying to get interior with the puck. And with him, I see him becoming more of a staple top nine player on a consistent basis. I don't envision Coronado being a top six player. There's certainly potential for him to do that. I just see him longer term becoming more of a top nine guy. But again, I don't really have a ceiling when it comes to players. I don't like to limit players. I feel like when you put ceilings on a player's potential, you're somewhat inhibiting and limiting your own perception of what they could be. And I don't usually like to do that. I just like to view players as what they could be at their very, very best, not just as a ceiling, like what they could be at their maximum, what they could be at their very possible best, like if it's superstar level or whatever it may be. With Coronado, I see a guy that can be moving up and down the top three lines, a guy who can be a first liner, a second liner, a third liner, complement every line really well, bring that competitive edge to every line. And again, systematically speaking, they drafted him for a reason, and he fits their system and style of play so well. And he fits Calgary's identity. That's why they drafted him a few years ago. And he's just been a really good part of this team so far this year. Has been really unique to watch in terms of that competitiveness that he brings and that edge, that I wouldn't say fire, but more of a competitive streak in terms of how he gets to pucks and chases down pucks. So he was really noticeable. And then Jonathan Huberdeau, I thought was really good. He's had a bit of a resurgence this year, which is really nice to see. I always enjoyed watching Jonathan Huberdeau's game. Always a pass first player, could dish the puck so nicely. And obviously, the early parts of his tenure in Calgary were a little bit tough to watch because we were so used to seeing a guy who could eclipse 110 or 100, maybe even 120 points. And we thought at some point he could get to 130 or maybe even 140 because of the way he was playing. But it was so weird. I remember watching that first season in Calgary and seeing his point totals dip by half was crazy to watch because you never really thought of Huberdeau as a 50-point guy. You always thought of him as an 80, 90, 100-point guy. So but I feel like this year has just been a really good year for him. It's really good to see him playing well. He deserves it. Just been playing so consistent playmaking and in terms of his ozone play. He looks more regimented and more structured than years past in Calgary. And I remember the first two-ish years, the routes weren't as consistent offensively. He just wasn't getting to places on time. His ice time wasn't consistent. And this year, he's just gotten consistent top 6 minutes. He deserves that. That's the type of player that he is. And he just needs to play that role with the right players consistently. So, some standouts from last night's matchup.